Hey YouTubers, it's Charlie. So a bunch of you guys requested I do a recap of everything that's happened on Game of Thrones so far. That would be like a 6-hour video. So I'm gonna do like a super recap from season 1 to season 4. Because the HBO Now service is also available, I'm giving away 2 iTunes gift cards for like the first month free. You basically get the first month free anyway, but all you have to do to enter is be a subscriber and leave a comment on this video. So just spoiler warning for everything on Game of Thrones so far, starting with season 1. Here we go. So for the first season, it had a very much Lannisters versus Starks motif, even though there were many, many great houses and a lot of big players in the East. But we pick up at Winterfell, we meet the Starks, we meet the Direwolves, and then we meet the king and his family of Lannisters, some of them secret twincest Lannisters. Most notable early WTFs include a teaser for the White Walkers, quite a way to open the show. You barely see them, big takeaway, ice zombies roaming around in the north, and no one believes the Night's Watch deserter, who Ned Stark ends up killing. Clearly something going on up there, but they won't really address it for a while. That was way up in the haunted forest, up north of Castle Black here. Winterfell is just a little bit south of there, and within the first 20 minutes of the pilot, we meet most of the main cast, including Lannisters, Baratheons. Over in the east, we meet Daenerys, her brother Viserys, and then Khal Drogo. 3 very, very important people. The show almost picks up in like a post-adventure setting, as in like this huge adventure had happened and everyone had gone to seed. Like nothing had happened, there'd been a long summer. Seasons last for different durations, so when people say winter is coming, it's coming after an extremely long summer that lasted many, many, many years. Robert Baratheon took the throne from the Targaryens, Daenerys and Viserys over here, their father, and has been ruling himself into his own grave ever since, laying bastards all over the kingdom every chance he gets. Ned and Robert are old friends, and Robert had come to Winterfell, to the Starks' home, to ask Ned to become his chief advisor, the Hand of the King. Ned reluctantly accepts, and they all make their way back to King's Landing, down here. Over in the east, Daenerys' brother Viserys is trying to take back the throne, but he needs an army, so he's going to marry Daenerys to Khal Drogo, so that he gains his Khalasar of 40,000 warriors. So back in King's Landing, because Ned has become Hand of the King, they betroth Ned Stark's oldest daughter, Sansa Stark, to Joffrey Baratheon, the current heir to the throne. The majority of the plot in King's Landing in Season 1 is all about Ned Stark slowly uncovering that Joffrey is secretly Cersei and Jaime Lannister's son. A lot of people get killed, and the biggest WTF of the season was Ned Stark eventually getting his head chopped off. Robert died during the season, so Joffrey ascended to the throne. Turns out he's a monster, and ends up having Ned Stark beheaded. Thus begins the War of the Five Kings, which takes us into Season 2. For the most part, for the first couple of seasons, Game of Thrones went from book to book as it went from season to season, so Season 2 is mostly Book 2 stuff. Season 2 is all about setting up the idea that several people in the Seven Kingdoms feel like they have a claim to the throne, in addition to obviously Daenerys over in the east. Robert's brother Stannis becomes a major antagonist against King's Landing. Then there's Robb Stark, who becomes Lord of Winterfell after his father Ned Stark was beheaded. They're so pissed about what happened to Ned that they declare war against the Lannisters. Technically, it's against the throne because they're going after Joffrey. They want Joffrey's head. So they're mostly going after Lannisters because they believe that Joffrey is a Lannister, even though at this point it's not common knowledge. Everyone in the kingdom isn't saying it out loud. Daenerys in the east has also become a growing force. At the end of Season 1, she hatched 3 new dragons who were believed to have been gone from the world forever. She takes over Khal Drogo's Khalasar, but it's slowly falling apart. Dragons have a very deep connection to magic, no matter what mythology you're talking about. So the minute they appeared on screen, it was like a visual reminder that magic does exist in this world. So throughout the season, you start to see more evidence of magic. Melisandre makes a smoke baby was one of the big early WTFs of the season. And eventually later, we see an army of White Walkers. So you get the sense that there is a greater war going on in the background that most of the main characters don't realize. You have the Red God and the Great Other, the god of the White Walkers. On the other side of that coin, most of the people in Westeros are just worried about fighting each other, the War of the Five Kings. Stannis amasses an army of ships all the way up here at Dragonstone, where he's stationed, takes them to King's Landing, and you have one of the greatest battles in Game of Thrones history, the Battle of Blackwater. The really fun part about the battle is we get to see Tyrion concoct an elaborate plan using wildfire. That opens the alchemy door in the Game of Thrones universe. It really expands the lore in a fun way. Wildfire is a lot like Greek fire in that you can't put it out with water. It'll just spread over the top of water. Everyone almost gets roasted alive, and we get one of the most famous lines from the show, the king. Just a reminder that loyalty on the show is fleeting. Eventually, in the east, Daenerys finds a renewed sense of purpose as her dragons continue to grow. She goes into a place called the House of the Undying and has several visions of things that may come to pass or things that may have come to pass had things in the past been different. The way visions work on Game of Thrones is very weird. Sometimes you're seeing things that might have happened had things gone differently, and sometimes you're seeing things that could still happen. This was also the season that we got to meet the Greyjoys in a much bigger way. They don't appear too often, but they're over here on the Iron Islands, reaving and raping their way all along the coast as their ancestors did. As we move into Season 3, we see the War of the Five Kings slowly abating just a little bit. Robb Stark has done a really good job. He's a great battle master, but things are just starting to fall apart all over the place. Up in the north, the Greyjoys have taken Winterfell, or Theon Greyjoy in the name of the Greyjoys. Stannis Baratheon's army has been shattered, and Tywin Lannister marches back into King's Landing, arguably the most fearsome man in all of Westeros. You could also call him the most powerful man and the richest man, although all those things go hand in hand. We still think of the Starks and the Lannisters as like the two big forces, but at this point we meet some of the other big houses, most notably the Tyrells. Aside from the Lannisters, they're the other richest house in Westeros. The Lannisters have their gold mines, the Tyrells have their land. They just have massive amounts of land. Up in the north too, Jon Snow is running counterintelligence against the Wildlings, like another big force of people living north of the Wall. He spends most of the season with them, falls in love with Ygritte, one of the best females in the show. As you'd expect, things go pretty bad for him, and he ends up coming back eventually. Not before though, one of the best visual effects sequences the show has ever had, the Wildlings climbing up the wall, a 600-foot high wall of ice. You also see like the birth of one of the best pairs of characters on the show, Jaime and Brienne. Brienne is trying to help the Starks by using Jaime Lannister to barter for ones that are still left in King's Landing. Remember, the War of the Five Kings is still going on, so Lannisters still very much at war with the Starks. Then, of course, we get to probably like the biggest moment on television that year, the Red Wedding. If you're not familiar with the Red Wedding, the name of the episode is actually The Reigns of Castamere. It's actually been turned into the Lannister theme. So anytime there are Lannisters on screen, you can softly hear the Reigns of Castamere tune playing in the background. The Red Wedding refers to an event whereby the Freys, in concert with the Lannisters in the throne, kill Robb Stark and pretty much all of his army at the Twins here at a dinner. They had been invited for a wedding. Robb Stark was supposed to marry one of the Freys' daughters. He derped, married someone else for love, pissed the Freys off, so the Freys allied themselves with the Lannisters and agreed to kill Robb Stark and everyone with him. Big characters on the show get killed off all the time, but in the Red Wedding, it was several big characters all within the span of a couple minutes of each other. One of the really fun sayings from the show and from the books is that the North remembers. So remember, even though a lot of Starks died that day, there's several that are still alive and will eventually get their revenge. Over in the East, Daenerys has finally amassed an army. She starts to liberate slaves. So she's hailed as the Mother of Dragons because of her 3 dragons, and as the mother of this big group of people that she's liberated. It's a fun twist because Targaryens are typically thought of as really fearsome people, and she's being thought of in this really benevolent way. So now we're moving into Season 4, and instead of having like, 1 or 2 really big WTF moments like climbing the wall or the Red Wedding, there are several big WTFs spread out throughout the season. We also get to meet one of the most interesting characters that the show has ever had, Oberyn Martell here. They're from the south in Dorne, a place that we haven't seen yet. House Martell, in an interesting twist, are bitter enemies of House Lannister. We don't really explore that too much until the end of the season. Oberyn Martell is trying to solve the mystery of his sister's murder. She was wife of Rhaegar Targaryen, who was killed during Robert's rebellion. He finds out that the man who killed her is the Mountain here, the champion of Tywin Lannister. He wants to kill a bunch of people, most notably Lannisters, but the Mountain ends up becoming the first person on the list. Oberyn Martell versus Gregor Clegane, probably the best fight all season. They fought in a trial by combat by way of the Purple Wedding. That's another Red Wedding level event. And the interesting thing that the show didn't convey is that in the timeline of the books, it actually happened relatively close to the Red Wedding. It was almost like George R. R. Martin was trying to help the fans out. He killed all these amazing Stark characters that everyone loves so much, and he had to answer it by killing off Joffrey Lannister, even though the Starks had absolutely nothing to do with it. For that, we have to thank the Queen of Thorns working with Littlefinger. So Joffrey dies, Tyrion gets blamed, thrown in the black cells, and ends up leading to a trial by combat. Oberyn becomes Tyrion's champion. That's how he got in the fight with the Mountain. He loses, so that means that Tyrion's going to be executed. But he is rescued by his brother working with Varys. Instead of going straight out, he actually goes up to his father's chambers. He's going to try and kill his father. Finds his longtime lover, Shae, in his bed, ends up killing them both. Shae was a really sad death, even if you didn't like the character, but Him killing Tywin on the shitter was probably one of the most fun deaths all season, and a huge WTF. So as the story is moving along, things keep growing and growing. Up at the wall, we have an army of wildlings that are marching on the wall, marching on Castle Black. As the battle reaches its epic climax, Stannis comes riding in with a new army of sellswords that he's acquired. They make quick work of the wildlings who surrender. So we're left with a bunch of characters that are going to try and figure out what to do after this big battle at the start of Season 5. Over in the east, Daenerys has now used her army to take control of one of the biggest cities in the area, Meereen. She finds, though, that there's a big difference between liberating a group of people and ruling them in a very effective way. It's like, what do you do after the battle is done? What does it mean to be a real queen? And by this time, her dragons are so big that they become a huge problem. They start eating people. So she is forced to lock 2 of them up. The other one, Drogon, is flying around at free will. He can't be captured. So he literally continues to become a bigger and bigger problem, physically and metaphorically. So that brings us to Season 5, where we're going to see like a couple really big new places, new locations, and a new big family that we haven't met yet. The Martells are one of the most powerful families in Westeros that the show hasn't done a lot with yet. We saw Oberyn Martell in Season 4, but he was just like the tip of the iceberg. Them bringing Dorne into the story required them to go to a whole new filming location. It looks vastly diverse from what we've seen before. Through and through, one of the most fun things is that from season to season, all the alliances change. So characters that were best friends in one season hate each other in the next. You know, just because Tyrion is a Lannister doesn't mean that his family isn't gunning for him still after the death of Joffrey. In the background too, we still have the White Walkers and the Red God. They're going to continue to be a really big thing, especially up at this other new location, Hardhome. Be very excited for special White Walker stuff to happen up here. So what I'm probably going to do next is do like a deep dive into a group of characters like the Martells or maybe Arya Stark. That'll probably post on Saturday, like in between Daredevil videos. So be sure to subscribe to get that. I'll announce the winners of the HBO Now giveaway whenever I post that. Just in case you're finding me for the first time, what I'm going to do on Sunday for the premiere is do a new bonus video early in the day, and then I'll post my episode review after episode 1 airs. When that episode posts, the giveaway for that video is going to be 2 signed copies of A Feast for Crows and A Dance with Dragons, both signed by George R. R. Martin, and I'll ship them anywhere in the world, so it doesn't matter. It's open to international people. After that, week to week, the giveaway will just be either Amazon gift cards or HBO Now subscriptions, just depending on what your preference is. So if you guys have any questions about the giveaways, or you have any requests for bonus videos week to week, because I will do bonus videos every week, just be sure to leave them in the comments. It's going to be a really fun season. There will be a lot of changes from the books, so as I do my episode reviews, I'll try to explain what is different from the books whenever it happens. If you do have the HBO Now service, you can watch every single episode of Game of Thrones on demand, just like Netflix. While you guys wait for my next Game of Thrones bonus video and for Daredevil to drop, you can click here for all my other Season 5 videos. I just did a Sansa video. And you can click here for my non-spoilery Daredevil Episode 1 review. So that's all dropping at midnight. Get excited. Everybody, let's high five. I'll see you guys in a little bit.